G'day guys, how's it all going? So in my previous video, I spoke about integers and the integer data type and the number of different types of integers that you could represent in Rust and spoke about some sizing and things of that nature. I also spoke a little bit about overflow and I talked about how the Rust compiler will do its best to try and stop you from doing that, right? And as you'll see in this example in a second, that's not always going to happen. All right. So this is something that was brought to my attention when I spoke to a Rust developer earlier today. But basically, here's an example, right? So I've got three numbers. The first one is 10. The second one is 255. They're both stored in a U8. Now, 255 is the maximum that you can store in a U8. So then for N3, I actually try to add the two numbers together, right? So what's going to happen is if I run this application in debug mode, so I go cargo run, just like this is actually going to tell me, as expected, that we're going to overflow, right? And it's because we're using two literal numbers that the compiler can work out immediately and go, okay, I can see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to add two literal numbers. I can tell that's going to be an overflow. So I'm going to throw you an arithmetic overflow error, right? At compile time, which is what I mentioned earlier. But here's another use case, right? So if I comment out this line and I use the next line below, instead of actually using two literal numbers, I'm now using the two variables and combining them together, right? So if I now save this and run this application, like so, it's actually going to compile and it's going to run, right? So the compiler didn't detect that this is bad, right? Didn't detect that, okay, N1 is 10, N2 is 255. Plussing the two together would actually give an overflow, right? It does during a debug at runtime detect that there has been an overflow and it throws what's called a panic, right? So it has gone as far to do that and let us know that we do have an issue and that we should be addressing this problem in our code. That's during debug though, right? If I now decide that I want to run for release, like so I'm doing a production-based release, I'm going to run this again and I'm going to get a very different result. And what I'm going to get is N3's actually now been set to 9, right? And you're like, okay, this is a bit weird. So N1 is 10, N2 is 255. If I was to add the two numbers together, it'd be 265, but 265 can't fit in the U8. So why is the value now 9? Right? Where did that come in the picture? Basically, what Rust is doing here is it's using something called two's complement, and it's trying to say, if you're trying to do something weird like this during production, we're not going to crash, but we are going to set the number to the two's complement of the addition. Now, I don't want to talk about what two's complement is. It's quite an interesting subject, and it's to do with binary. But basically, just understand that you need to be careful if you're adding two numbers together like this, and you're not paying attention to what these numbers could be at runtime, right? Because as you can see here, this is all runtime based work, right? So that's all I really wanted to show in this video. I just wanted to cover the situation where you can still go and overflow. What happens when you do a release build? Well, you get a somewhat predictable but unpredictable result. So if you're a little unsure what two's complement is, I suggest you go and look it up in a video. It's quite extensive and it's too much for me to describe in one simple programming video like this. If you want to know more about it and you want me to do a video on it, please let me know. I'm happy to do so. But for the purpose of Rust, I really don't want to get into that at the moment. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to get that out of the way. So I was completely across the board in terms of how Overflow works. But basically, I'm going to end it here. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.